6 months earlier, Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the colony ship New Horizon, watching their new home grow larger against the star-filled void. The planet below swirled with vibrant blues and greens, its surface decorated with white clouds that looked like scattered cotton balls. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Marcus Webb, the mission's chief biologist. His weathered face, marked by years of fieldwork in Earth's most remote locations, showed genuine wonder. "Almost too beautiful." "Don't get poetic on me now, Doc," Sarah replied with a grin. At 35, she had led more colonization missions than any other human captain. But something about this assignment felt different. "We've got 8,000 colonists counting on us to make this work." Behind them, Engineer Yuki Tanaka looked up from her tablet, her dark eyes reflecting concern. "Captain, I've been reviewing the Council's data on Paradise 7. Something doesn't add up." Sarah turned from the viewport. "What do you mean?" "The environmental reports are almost too perfect. Breathable atmosphere, abundant water, fertile soil, moderate climate zones." Yuki hesitated. "But there's no mention of indigenous life forms. No animals, no insects, no microorganisms listed at all." Dr. Webb frowned. "That's impossible. A planet this lush would have to support complex ecosystems. Unless the Council is hiding something." Sarah muttered, then caught herself. She couldn't afford to sound paranoid in front of her senior staff. "Run full biological scans as soon as we're in orbit. I want to know what we're walking into." 2 hours later, the scan results made everyone go silent. "Captain." Yuki's voice was barely above a whisper. "You need to see this." The holographic display showed Paradise 7's surface in stunning detail. Vast forests stretched across continents. Rivers meandered through valleys, and mountains reached toward the sky like ancient guardians. But moving through this paradise were creatures that defied explanation. 6-legged predators the size of Earth's elephants prowled through crystal forests. Aerial hunters with wingspan broader than small aircraft circled overhead. In the oceans, massive tentacled beings created whirlpools that could swallow entire cities. "Sweet mother of," Dr. Webb breathed. "Those aren't just animals. They're apex predators. All of them." Sarah studied the readings, her military training kicking in. "Atmospheric composition? Oxygen levels are 30% higher than Earth standard," Yuki reported. "Everything here would be bigger, stronger, faster than Earth equivalents." "And the plant life?" "Captain, some of these trees show signs of active defense mechanisms. Look at this." The display zoomed in on a grove where massive vines were strangling what looked like a predator twice the size of a grizzly bear. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them, her expression was steel. "Communications, open a channel to Earth Command." "Captain," the comm officer replied, "we're too far out. Signal delay would be 8 months each way." "Then we're on our own." Sarah looked at her team. "The Council sent us to a world that makes Earth's most dangerous places look like playgrounds. The question is, was this intentional?" Dr. Webb studied the creature data. "If it was, they clearly don't understand humans very well." "What do you mean?" A slow smile spread across the biologist's face. "Captain, I've spent my career in places where everything tries to kill you. Amazon rainforest, Siberian wilderness, Australian outback. This?" He gestured to the display. "This is just Tuesday for humanity." Sarah felt a familiar fire kindle in her chest. The same feeling she'd had when facing impossible odds in the Martian colonies, or when establishing the first successful settlement on Europa. "All right, people. The Council gave us a death world and called it Paradise. Let's show them what humans do with death worlds." But as the New Horizon began its descent, none of them noticed the small probe that had been shadowing them since they left the jump gate. A probe that was now transmitting everything back to the Galactic Council. The real test was about to begin. The landing site should have been perfect. A wide valley surrounded by gentle hills, with a crystal-clear river running through the center. The soil readings showed rich nutrients, and the temperature held steady at a comfortable 22 degrees Celsius. Sarah watched from the command center as the first shuttle touched down. Through the live feed, she could see the advanced team step onto Paradise 7's surface. The colors were more vivid than any Earth landscape. The grass wasn't just green, it shimmered with an almost metallic sheen, and the flowers that dotted the meadows seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "Atmosphere readings confirm safe for human breathing," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez from the surface. "Air quality is actually better than most Earth cities." Copy that. Begin standard survey procedures. For the first hour, everything went according to plan. The advanced team collected samples, set up basic equipment, and established the landing beacon for the main colony ships. Dr. Webb supervised the biological surveys with barely contained excitement. "Captain, you should see this," he radioed. "The biodiversity readings are off the charts. This place is like the Galapagos Islands on steroids." That's when the first attack came. Lieutenant Rodriguez was examining a cluster of what looked like earth daisies when the ground exploded beneath him. A creature burst from the soil, something between a mole and a wolverine, but the size of a small car with claws that could slice through steel. "Contact. Contact." Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "We've got hostile life forms." Sarah watched in horror as more creatures emerged from what had seemed like peaceful grassland. The daisies revealed themselves as lures, connected to underground predators that had been waiting for exactly this moment. "All teams, fall back to the shuttle," she ordered, but the retreat was cut short when the sky darkened with flying creatures. They looked like pterodactyls crossed with jet fighters, diving at speeds that created sonic booms. Their talons could puncture the shuttle's hull. "Captain," Dr. Webb's voice was surprisingly calm amid the chaos. "I need to stay. This is incredible. Doc, get to safety." "That's an order." "With respect, ma'am, I didn't survive 20 years in Earth's deadliest environments by running from interesting predators." Sarah watched as Webb calmly observed the attacking creatures, taking notes even as chaos erupted around him. He moved with practiced ease, dodging attacks while collecting data. When one of the burrowing creatures charged him, he sidestepped at the last second and tagged it with a biotracker. "Fascinating," he muttered into his comm. "Ambush predators with pack coordination. The flying ones are using herding tactics to drive prey toward ground-based hunters. This isn't a nature documentary, Doc." "Actually, Captain, it kind of is. These creatures are following predictable patterns. Earth predators, just bigger." Lieutenant Rodriguez, meanwhile, had found cover behind a boulder and was returning fire with standard plasma weapons. The shots seemed to barely slow the creatures down. "Weapons aren't effective," he reported. "Switch to kinetic rounds," Sarah ordered. "Earth standard ammunition." The change was immediate. The old-fashioned bullets that most species had abandoned centuries ago proved devastatingly effective against creatures evolved to handle energy weapons. "That's interesting," Dr. Webb noted. "These predators have developed resistance to energy-based attacks. Suggests they've encountered galactic technology before." The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. They've used this place as a dumping ground before. "Captain," Yuki's voice cut in from the ship, "I'm detecting massive movement signatures converging on your position. Whatever you disturbed, you've attracted attention from across the continent." Through the shuttle's cameras, Sarah could see the landscape transforming. What had appeared to be a peaceful valley was revealing its true nature. Trees were moving, repositioning themselves. The river was changing course. Even the mountains seemed to be shifting. "The entire ecosystem is interconnected," Dr. Webb observed with scientific detachment that bordered on insane. "This isn't just a collection of predators. It's a single massive organism that uses the appearance of separate species to lure in prey. Doc, please tell me you have an idea." "Actually, I do. But you're not going to like it. Try me. We need to prove we're not prey. We need to establish dominance." Before Sarah could object, Dr. Webb walked directly toward the largest of the ground creatures. It was the size of a small building with armor plating that looked like it could stop a tank shell. The creature charged. Webb stood his ground until the last possible second, then did something no galactic species would ever think to do. He punched it in the nose. The massive predator stopped, shook its head, and looked at Webb with what could only be described as respect. "Dominance established," Webb said calmly. "These creatures understand strength, not technology. They've been fighting energy weapons for so long they've forgotten what physical force feels like." The other creatures began backing away, watching the humans with new interest. "Captain," Rodriguez said, "I think we just passed some kind of test." But their relief was short-lived. Yuki's voice crackled over the comm with urgent news. "Captain, I'm detecting ships approaching the system. Multiple vessels, unknown configuration." "The Council?" "Negative. These ships, they're different, older, and they're moving fast." Sarah looked at the creatures around them, now watching the humans with curious intelligence rather than predatory hunger. "Doc, I think our problems are just beginning. On the contrary, Captain, Webb replied, scratching the massive predator behind what might have been ears. I think we just found our allies. The ships that emerged from hyperspace were unlike anything in the Galactic Council's databases. They were organic-looking, with hulls that seemed to grow rather than being built. As they entered Paradise 7's atmosphere, Sarah realized with growing dread that they moved like the creatures below, with predatory intelligence and perfect coordination. Captain, Yuki's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Those ships aren't from any known civilization, and they're not trying to communicate. Through the command center's main display, Sarah watched as the alien vessels deployed what looked like hunting parties across the planet's surface. The beings that emerged were bipedal but wrong, too tall, too angular, with movements that suggested they were more machine than organic life. Dr. Webb's voice crackled over the comm from the surface. Captain, the local predators are reacting to these newcomers. They're afraid, genuinely terrified. If creatures that can tear apart starships are scared, Sarah muttered, what does that make these newcomers? Her question was answered when the first landing party encountered the alien hunters. The footage was brief but horrifying. The newcomers moved with mechanical precision, using weapons that seemed to drain the life force from everything they touched. The massive predators that had dominated Paradise 7 for eons were reduced to withered husks in seconds. Their harvesters, Dr. Webb observed with clinical detachment that didn't quite hide his fear. They're not here to conquer. They're here to consume. Sarah made a command decision that would change everything. All shuttles, immediate evacuation to the surface. Captain? Yuki questioned. If these harvesters can drain life force through their weapons, being in space makes us sitting ducks. Our best chance is on the ground with the local wildlife. You want us to ally with creatures that tried to eat us an hour ago? Doc? Sarah called down to the surface. How's your new friend handling the harvester threat? There was a pause. Then Webb's voice returned with something that might have been excitement. Captain, you need to see this. The predators aren't running from the harvesters. They're organizing. The display showed an impossible sight. Creatures that should have been fighting each other were forming coordinated groups. Aerial hunters were taking formation with ground predators. Even the plant life was moving, creating defensive positions. It's like the entire planet is mobilizing for war, Webb continued, and they're looking at our landing party like they want us to join them. Sarah felt a familiar thrill, the same feeling she'd had leading desperate charges against impossible odds. All shuttles, emergency deployment. We're taking this fight to the ground. Captain, Rodriguez interrupted from the surface. The harvesters are adapting to local tactics faster than anything should be able to. They're learning. Then we better learn faster. The next few hours became a crash course in interspecies cooperation that no military academy could have prepared them for. The humans found themselves fighting alongside creatures that could level city blocks, guided by an intelligence that spanned continents. Dr. Webb discovered that the local predators communicated through subsonic vibrations that human technology could translate. More importantly, they had been fighting the harvesters for generations. This isn't the first time, Webb explained during a brief lull in combat. These harvesters come every few hundred years. The local ecosystem has evolved specifically to fight them. Why didn't the council know about this? Sarah demanded. Because, a new voice said behind her. The council has never bothered to actually study the worlds they designate as Deathworlds. Sarah spun around to find a figure in advanced armor that was definitely not human. The being removed its helmet, revealing features that were almost familiar, if humans had evolved with silver skin and eyes like stars. I am Kethvar, of the Predecessor Union. We've been monitoring this system for millennia. Predecessors? Dr. Webb asked. But you're supposed to be extinct. We prefer to think of ourselves as retired, until recently. Kethvar gestured toward the ongoing battle. The harvesters have become too bold. They're no longer content with periodic culling. They want to strip entire worlds bare. Sarah studied the newcomer. Why help us? Because, Kethvar said with something that might have been a smile, in 3,000 years of monitoring Deathworlds, you're the first species we've seen that chooses to fight alongside the ecosystem instead of trying to dominate it. The conversation was cut short by an urgent communication from orbit. Yuki's voice was strained. Captain, massive harvester fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. We're looking at hundreds of ships. Through the ground-based displays, they could see the harvester vessels beginning systematic bombardment of the planet's surface. But something unexpected happened. The planet fought back. Massive root systems emerged from the ground, reaching into space like grasping fingers. Atmospheric electrical storms began forming geometric patterns that interfered with harvester weapons. The entire world had become a single massive organism dedicated to its own defense. This is what the harvesters really fear, Kethvar explained. Not individual predators, but a fully awakened Deathworld. Awakened? Sarah asked. Paradise 7 has been dormant for centuries, conserving energy. Your arrival, specifically your choice to fight with rather than against the ecosystem, triggered a planetary awakening. Dr. Webb looked up from his readings with wonder. Captain, the biodiversity readings are spiking off the charts. New species are literally evolving in real time to fight the harvesters. The planet is adapting, Kethvar confirmed, and it's using human DNA patterns as templates. Sarah felt a chill. What does that mean? It means, Webb said slowly, that we're not just fighting alongside Paradise 7, we're becoming part of it. The implication was staggering. But before anyone could fully process it, the ground shook with the impact of harvester landing craft. Save the existential crisis for later, Sarah ordered. Right now we have a war to win. But as the final battle began, each human could feel something changing inside them. They were stronger, faster, more aware of their environment than they had ever been before. Paradise 7 wasn't just accepting them as allies, it was making them into something new. The final battle raged across Paradise 7 with an intensity that defied description. Harvester forces descended from orbit in waves, their life-draining weapons cutting swaths through the planet's defending ecosystem. But for every creature they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Sarah found herself fighting alongside beings that had tried to kill her just hours before. The massive burrowing creatures now served as living bunkers, their armored hides deflecting harvester energy blasts while humans fired from protected positions. The aerial hunters had learned to coordinate with human aircraft, creating attack patterns that no military strategist had ever conceived. Captain, Dr. Webb's voice came through the comm, but something was different. His voice carried harmonics that resonated with the subsonic communications of the local predators. The planet is trying to tell us something. Can you translate? It's not language as we understand it. It's more like shared experience. Paradise 7 is showing us the true history of the Deathworld classifications. Through a connection that bypassed normal human senses, Sarah began to understand. The Galactic Council had been using worlds like Paradise 7 as dumping grounds for species they wanted to eliminate. The harvesters were their cleanup crew, arriving periodically to consume any life that had managed to survive. The Deathworld classification was never a joke, Sarah realized. It was a death sentence. Exactly, Kethvar confirmed, his voice now also carrying the same harmonic resonance. The predecessor was changing too, his silver skin taking on patterns that matched the local flora. But the Council never anticipated a species like yours. What makes humans different? Lieutenant Rodriguez asked. He was crouched behind a crystalline formation that was actively growing to provide better cover, and Sarah noticed his reflexes were now fast enough to dodge attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. Most species, when faced with a hostile environment, try to change the environment to suit them, Kethvar explained. Humans adapt themselves to fit the environment. Paradise 7 recognizes this trait and is amplifying it. The truth was both wondrous and terrifying. The planet wasn't just accepting human colonists, it was evolving them into the perfect guardians for a Deathworld ecosystem. Yuki's voice crackled over the comm from her position, coordinating orbital defenses. Captain, I'm detecting massive power buildups in the harvester fleet. They're preparing for something big. Through the tactical display, Sarah could see harvester ships repositioning into a configuration that looked ominously familiar from ancient Earth military history. They're going to try to crack the planet. Scorched Earth tactics, Webb confirmed. If they can't harvest the life force, they'll destroy the entire biosphere. But Paradise 7 had one more surprise in store. The ground beneath the entire continent began to pulse with bioluminescent patterns. The pulse spread across oceans, over mountains, through the core of the planet itself. Every living thing on Paradise 7 began to resonate with the same frequency. What's happening? Sarah asked. Kethvar's eyes were wide with something approaching religious awe. The planet is preparing to jump. Jump? Deathworlds at full awakening aren't bound by the same physical laws as normal planets. Paradise 7 is about to demonstrate why the harvesters have never successfully consumed a fully awakened ecosystem. The sensation was indescribable. Every human on the planet felt the moment when Paradise 7 gathered itself. Not just the rocky core and atmosphere, but every molecule of life, every thought, every dream of survival, and stepped sideways through space-time. In an instant, the harvester fleet found themselves orbiting empty space while Paradise 7 materialized directly behind them. The planet's new position put it within striking distance of the harvester mothership. But Paradise 7 didn't attack in any conventional sense. Instead, it simply extended its biosphere to engulf the enemy fleet. Sarah watched in amazement as the sterile metal of the harvester ships began to bloom with impossible gardens. Life found ways to exist in the vacuum of space, fed by energies that normal science insisted didn't exist. The harvesters are being converted, Dr. Webb observed with scientific fascination. Paradise 7 isn't destroying them. It's incorporating them into the ecosystem. The transformation was total. Within hours, the harvester fleet had become a living space habitat, connected to Paradise 7 by streams of bioluminescent energy that looked like the aurora borealis given three-dimensional form. But the most surprising change was in the humans themselves. Sarah looked at her hands and saw that her skin now carried the same crystalline patterns as the local plant life. When she focused, she could sense the emotional state of every living thing within kilometers. Her physical capabilities had expanded beyond normal human limits. She could survive in the vacuum of space for short periods, communicate directly with the planetary ecosystem, and process information at speeds that made her previous military training seem sluggish. "Are we still human?" Rodriguez asked. His question carried harmonics that conveyed layers of meaning impossible in baseline human language. "We're what humans become when they choose cooperation over conquest," Keithvar replied. "The predecessors went through a similar transformation eons ago. We became something more than our original species, but we never lost what made us who we were." Dr. Webb was practically vibrating with excitement as he analyzed their transformation. "Captain, the changes are permanent but not compulsory. Humans arriving on Paradise 7 will have the choice to undergo integration with the ecosystem or remain baseline human. The planet respects free will." "What about the Council?" Yuki asked. "They're not going to be happy about losing their dumping ground." Sarah felt a new sensation, the combined will of Paradise 7 and its integrated population. The feeling was like standing in the center of a hurricane made of pure determination. "Let them come," she said, her voice now carrying the harmonics of an entire world. "Paradise 7 isn't a death world anymore. It's a sanctuary, and we're its guardians." But even as victory settled over the transformed planet, Sarah could sense something else through her new connection to the galactic ecosystem. Other death worlds were awakening, responding to Paradise 7's call. The age of the Galactic Council's dominance was ending. A new era was beginning. Epilogue. The Council's new reality doctor. Zefti stood before the full assembly of the Galactic Council, her four eyes unable to meet the gaze of the assembled representatives. The holographic displays around the chamber showed data that challenged everything they thought they knew about death worlds and the species that inhabited them. "Summarize your findings," Dr. Council Leader Morden commanded, his deep voice carrying undertones of barely controlled panic. "Honored council members," Zefti began, her voice trembling, "Paradise 7 is no longer classifiable under our existing system. The planet has achieved full biosphere integration with the human colony. More concerning, it appears to be communicating with other classified death worlds throughout the galaxy." The chamber erupted in concerned chittering, growling, and other species-specific sounds of distress. "Impossible," declared Councillor Vexith, her serpentine form coiled in agitation. "Planets cannot communicate across interstellar distances." "With respect, Councillor, we clearly don't understand as much about planetary consciousness as we believed. Our monitoring stations have detected similar awakening patterns on 17 other death worlds, all worlds where we have disposed of unwanted species." Council Leader Morden's massive form shifted uneasily. "What are you suggesting, Doctor?" "I'm not suggesting anything, sir. I'm reporting facts. The death worlds are awakening, and they're not happy about how we've used them." A new voice echoed through the chamber, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The voice carried harmonics that no single species could produce. It was the combined voices of thousands of beings speaking as one. "Council of the Consuming Galaxy," the voice said, and every being in the chamber felt an instinctive urge to flee. "Your time of dominance ends now." The main holographic display activated, showing a figure that had once been human, but was now something more. Captain Sarah Chen stood in a garden that couldn't exist, a place where vacuum-adapted plants grew in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "We know about your harvester fleets," Sarah continued, her words carrying the weight of an awakened world. "We know about your disposal programs. We know about the species you've condemned to Deathworlds for the crime of being inconvenient." "This is preposterous," Mordun declared, but his voice lacked conviction. "You are a single colony on a single world. You cannot threaten the established galactic order." Sarah's expression might have been a smile if smiles could convey the patience of geological time. "We are 17 awakened Deathworlds and counting. We are every species you ever tried to eliminate, and we are no longer asking for your permission to exist." The display shifted to show other worlds, planets that blazed with bioluminescent patterns visible from space, ecosystems that existed in configurations that violated known physics, beings that had transcended their original species, while retaining their essential nature. "What do you want?" Mordun asked, and the question sounded like surrender. "Simple," Sarah replied. Stop using worlds as dumping grounds. Stop deciding which species deserve to survive. Stop pretending you have the right to control the galaxy. And if we refuse?" Sarah's form flickered and for a moment seemed to encompass entire star systems. "Council leader, you sent us to Paradise 7 because you thought it would kill us. Instead, it made us into something you never imagined. Do you really want to find out what we've become capable of?" The chamber fell silent except for the sound of various species' breathing apparatus working overtime. Finally, Counselor Vexith spoke. "What assurance do we have that these awakened worlds won't seek revenge for our past actions?" "None," Sarah admitted with brutal honesty. "But you have our word that we're more interested in protecting the innocent than punishing the guilty. The harvesters who attacked Paradise 7 weren't destroyed. They were integrated into our ecosystem and given the chance to choose a different path. Most of them took it." Dr. Zeftai looked up from her instruments with wonder. "Council members, I'm detecting similar energy patterns emerging around colonies throughout our territory. Not just on Deathworlds, on any world where humans have established settlements. The implications hit the chamber like a physical wave. Humans weren't just surviving on Deathworlds. They were transforming every world they touched into something new." "How many human colonies are there?" Mordun asked quietly. 847 confirmed settlements, Zeftai reported, and the transformation appears to be accelerating. Sarah's voice carried a note of something that might have been sympathy. "The age of the Galactic Council controlling evolution through forced selection is ending. A new age is beginning, one where worlds choose their own destinies. What happens to us?" Mordun asked. "That depends on you," Sarah replied. "The awakened worlds are willing to coexist with the galactic community, but only if that community chooses cooperation over domination." The display shifted one final time, showing Paradise 7 in all its transformed glory. Beings from dozens of species worked together in harmony, creating technologies and art forms that no single race could have achieved alone. The planet itself pulsed with contentment, its Deathworld nature transformed into something protective rather than hostile. The Deathworld classification was never a joke, Sarah concluded. It was a promise that life finds a way, that evolution never stops, and that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You just never realized that stronger could mean this much stronger. The transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Council alone with a truth they had never wanted to face. They were no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. Outside the council chambers, across thousands of worlds, humans continued to do what humans had always done best. They adapted, they cooperated, and they turned the impossible into the inevitable. The Deathworlds were no longer death sentences. They had become graduation ceremonies, and humanity had just graduated to something the galaxy had never seen before. In the depths of space, Paradise 7 pulsed with bioluminescent joy. sending signals to its awakened siblings across the galaxy. The message was simple but profound. We survived. We adapted. We became more. And this is only the beginning. The end.